Hey, this is Lauren at Mill City Roasters. This past week we replaced the MCR-6 in our roasting facility with a newer model and wanted to share the installation with you. This process will be similar for anyone installing a roaster with a capacity between 6 and 20 kg. Let's get going. At the start of the video here, you're seeing me and Alex, who's our warehouse manager and our lead mechanic, situate the 3 roaster crates and prepare to get them opened up. First, we snip the metal banding with shears, and then we use the drill to take out the screws on the side panels of this first crate. This is a crate that the body of the roaster is in. We're being extra careful with this crate because we're going to reuse it, but if that's not part of your plan, you could just use a crowbar to pry the sidewalls apart from the back and front panels of the crate. After getting all of the screws out, we use a sawzall with a short, sturdy blade to cut through the nails on the top panel, which is about to happen here. Alex kind of showed me how to use the sawzall, but it was new for me and it was really high, so it was hard to reach. Then we switched to a more flexible blade for this next part. He's kind of showing me here how to use the flexible blade to cut the panel away from the brackets or the braces inside the crate. We're basically cutting through the nails and keeping the blade as close to the side panels as possible. It's a little hard to get that blade positioned correctly, so I let Alex do most of these. The first side panel is ready to come off here. We bend it down and away from the roaster and then back up to loosen the nails and then pull it away from the crate. I had to kick at the bottom a little bit to get it fully removed. We repeated the process on the other side here, but you can see I'm holding the brackets as Alex sawed them to make sure they didn't fly away on us. Lastly, Alex uses the saw to release the brackets at the bottom of the machine. And you're going to see him be very careful to keep the blade away from the body of the roaster. That smaller box that we pulled away up front is the control panel. It comes unmounted on the larger roasters. You'll see us attach it later in the video. Alex let me cut away all the saran wrap here so we can see the machine. Very exciting. Now I'm using a hex key to open up the access panels on the bottom of the machine, so we can put the forklift forks through them and we can lift the roaster up. Here goes Steve with my dog Patty. So we cleared out a little bit of space for the forklift, and then Alex uses the forklift to carefully thread the forks through the top of the lower compartment where the electrical components are. There's only about 6 to 8 inches of vertical clearance, so you have to be really careful. Once those forks were clear, with about 3 to 4 inches exposed on the opposite side, Alex moved the forks apart slowly and began to lift the machine. Steve and I are stabilizing it with a hand on either side. Roasters are really top heavy and you have to be extremely careful when lifting them. Once the machine was in the air, we could clear out the pallet and the rest of the packing materials. Then we put the roaster back on the ground, and from there we used a pallet jack to move the roaster into the roastery. Moving on to crate number 3, this is the cooling tray. Same process here again, unscrewing the side panels. We only did one side this time because there are fewer braces on the inside of this crate. You can see us kind of bend the top 2 of the braces and sort of push them back up so we can clear a path for the tray to come out. Alex uses the forklift to lift the cooling tray up, and then we could just pull the pallet away from the cooling tray. Get that crate out of the way. Now you're going to watch me struggle to properly steer a pallet jack. It takes a couple tries here, but I finally get it. I use the pallet jack to lift the cooling tray and move it into the roastery. I set it down just behind the body of the roaster, and it's time to open up our last crate. Crate number 2, which is the last crate that we're going to open, is the lightest because it's only got the chaff collector in it. More unscrewing this time, starting with the top lid, and then I use the sawzall to open up the panels. I just kind of use the sawzall along the whole seam of the back panel back there. Chaff collector is mostly exposed from there. We open up a couple of those brackets, and then Alex just shimmies the chaff can out by hand, and I wheel the crate off with the pallet jack. Now we are done using the sawzall, so we could take out our earplugs. Time for a little cleaning up in the hallway. And then Alex puts some 2x4s on a pallet jack for extra height, and then he just lifts the chaff collector up and wheels it into the roastery. Next, we're going to get this control panel mounted. These control panels come unmounted, so the crates can be more narrow. A lot of customers appreciate that extra clearance when they're taking them through the doors of their roastery. To attach them, you just remove the 6 screws on the front of the panel. You can see Alex doing that. And then I bolted the panel box to the bar with the mounting bolts, and then we reattach the front panel. After we're done with this, it's time to move the roaster over to its final position where it will be in our roastery. Since we were replacing an older Model 6K that was already in the space, the main venting stack was already in place for this machine. So since that was the case, the easiest way to start was to align the chaff collector with the staff above it. Here you'll see me unpacking some of the MCR-6 venting kit. We're only going to use some of this venting because we have some of the venting left over from the older machine. So I set a couple things aside. Our venting specialist recommended that we do what's called dry fitting for the venting first, which means we got everything in place and we got everything clamped down before sealing the port adapters with silicone. You'll see us doing this at the end, the sealing part. This dry fitting process helps ensure that everything is positioned properly. We had to fuss with this chaff collector a little bit because we wanted this roaster to be placed parallel to the 20 kg that's next to it. So the line coming off the chaff collector going to the drum of the roaster had to be perfectly angled. Next, we got the rest of that venting line in place. We tried to get all the quick release clamps facing the same direction here as well because it looks nicer. This is where we realized that we forgot to set the feet of the roaster down, so we had to lift the roaster up and set the feet underneath it. You'll watch us do that now. These feet come kind of wrapped like a big roll in the crate or in the cooling tray, depending on your model. That looks better. While Alex fine-tunes that chaff collector position and the termination vent, Steve helped me get the cooling tray in place. We just kind of get it pretty close to the machine, and then he helps me slide it into position right underneath the drum door. You can see the cooling tray gets pushed up really close, so the bottom of it is flush with the body of the roaster. And then it really looks like a full coffee roasting system. Next, I'm cutting open the greens hopper, and Alex is placing the cooling tray fan so that we can connect the last of our venting. I continue to unpack a few more things that were stored in the cooling tray, and then I start to unwrap the other accessories like the trier handle and the lamp. And I also take some time to wipe all the steel metal parts. Some of the parts like the roaster door handle come with a layer of grease to protect them from rust while they're in transit. As we start to wrap up the venting, Alex is finishing that last line, which will vent the cooling tray to the branch above the chaff can. There's a clamp here that gave us a little bit of trouble. We had to work to kind of pinch it inwards and get it to close properly. All of this venting is kind of built in this modular system, which makes it really easy to snap apart and clean when you're taking care of your roaster. And it also gives you a lot of play to get everything positioned perfectly when you install your machine. We wanted all those clamps facing the same direction, which looks nicer. There's that clamp that was giving us a hard time. Cool. Once all the venting was laid out in the right place, we went back and applied silicone to all the port adapters, right where they connect to the port on the machine. We did this and we connected everything back into place right away, but our venting specialist actually recommends that you put the silicone on the adapters and then let everything set up overnight on the ports so that you get a really good seal before moving forward, and that will make all of those connection points really strong and nothing will kind of bend or warp once the weight of the full venting kit is in place. Even after putting all the silicone sealant on everything, reattaching everything was really easy because we had already done a complete layout and the spacing was already perfect. Here you see Alex installing a locking plug to work with the locking receptacle that we already had in the spot from the previous 6 kg. When you install a machine, your electrician will be a good resource as to whether you can or should install a locking plug or receptacle, or if you should hardwire the cord of the unit into a junction box. With power connected to the main roaster body, we hooked up the power for the cooling tray fan on the other side. There's 3 cables that are easily labeled that kind of wire from the cooling fan onto the roaster body. And then we turned everything on to make sure it was all running properly. Alex had also connected the gas line a little bit earlier, but you'll see him open up the gas line and then check for gas leaks all around it. We're just using our leak check spray, and if there were a gas leak here, we'd see bubbling up at the connection, but this was all really nicely sealed. Here's an important step. The alarm on the control panel is super loud. We make it a little less ear-shattering by unscrewing the clear red cover and placing a tiny piece of tape over the hole on the buzzer. The buzzer is at the center. It's surrounded by LED lights. It's like black plastic, about the size of a pencil eraser. The goal is just to cover the hole. It's still loud, but it doesn't make you jump. What we're doing next is replacing the orifices. Our roasters arrive to customers set up for propane, but many roasteries, including ours, use natural gas. The conversion is super simple. Alex is removing each of the burners from the manifold. There are 16 on this machine. And then he's handing them to me, where I'm unscrewing the propane orifices from the bottom of the diffuser. And then I'm screwing the natural gas orifice back in its place. And then I'm handing them back to Alex to reinstall. Once that's done, I'm going to put a sticker on the back of the roaster so everyone can see that it's been converted to operate on natural gas. That's going to be really important for any inspections or any future operators on this roaster, so they know what the fuel source is. That's where it goes, back there. Next, we had Aziz from our tech support team come in and adjust our gas regulator so our fuel adjustments would happen a little quicker on the control panel. Aziz helps new customers do this during their setup call, so this may be something that he'll work with you on. Lastly, I got about 30 pounds of seasoning greens lined up to season this machine. We're going to do that on another day, but I just wanted to have them close by. Altogether, the process of uncrating and installing this roaster took just under 2 hours. I think that's fast. It's probably because Alex has done this a few dozen times. If it had been me installing the roaster by myself, I think I would have blocked out a nice half day for it. We provide an installation manual for all new roasters, but if any questions come up while you're installing your machine, we're only a phone call away. We hope that this video has been helpful for you to give you a general idea of what it's like to uncrate and install a new production Mill City roasters. Let us know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.